Hello my fellow gnomes, it's finally time for the video you've all been waiting for, the GnomeJam results. To start off with, I'd like to congratulate everyone for taking part. It looks like you've all been really busy, and with almost 100 submissions on my end, things have been pretty busy trying to keep up with you all as well. Overall, I've been really impressed with the calibre of some of these entries, so I hope you're all proud of what you achieved in such a short time for this game jam. I don't have time to highlight them all in the video, but if you stick around to the end, I promise I put together a special compilation of every game submitted, so you'll have to see if you can spot your game in there. To start off though, I thought we'd take a look at some of the fantastic spherical creations. Obviously the theme of this jam was to only use spherical parts, which presents an especially big problem for building. However, there were a few creations I thought really stepped up to the plate here, and made some amazing games that actually use the limitation to their advantage. The first of these is Spoobisland by Ruby1 Kenobi. You spawn in by what appears to be a recreation of the classic Roblox house. Everything seems pretty jolly until you head down the road and discover another similar house. However, things aren't going quite so well here, and as you travel further down the road, you discover the inhabitants appear to have met a rather grisly end. I really like the subtle storytelling of this one, which succeeds in telling its message without actually resorting to any text or dialogue. Pretty interesting. Next up, we have Gnomes Adventure by Mr. Pro 1. You could argue that the actual gameplay mechanics here are pretty basic with just a simple egg hunt, but they have put a lot of work into this game. There's several amazing gnome egg creations that we need to find, and I think the map that they've made really fits the spherical style, and with the lighting on it, it just looks really good. Finally, over to one more open world adventure game now with Goof Sphere from Benaz. Honestly, this is probably one of the best looking games in the entire competition. It can be really easy to get caught in the trap of attempting to use spheres to make awkward, misshapen walls, but they've done a really good job here by using the spheres to create a fluid and natural looking terrain with rolling hills, so everything flows together and doesn't look out of place. Moving on, I thought we'd take a look at some of the multiplayer submissions, starting off with Space Race from Koogee Coin. It has a simple enough concept where you race against others to collect the most orbs, but what I really like about this is just how well executed it is. The movement feels really smooth, and the game has some really good sound effects to aid the immersion, which helps to make it a really enjoyable experience. Another standout multiplayer experience was Battle Balls from Null Boyd. This is essentially like an Agario game where you start out as a tiny little ball and have to find and eat other small balls in order to grow, eventually getting to the point where you're so big you can barely move. We played this on game night with quite a full server, and we all had a lot of fun. I like the fact that when you get too big, you then have to rebirth and go back to being small again. I'm not really that big of a fan of rebirth mechanics normally, but this is actually one of the few times where it works really well. Now, there are loads of good multiplayer games out there, especially some cracking mini-games, but these single-player ones really stood out for me with their unique concept. The first of these is from Charman444, and this one definitely fits into the category of experience rather than game. He's created this amazing recreation of our solar system inside Roblox. You can watch all the planets moving in their orbit, and it's actually quite peaceful and calming just to watch it all in motion. There's even a bit of interaction where you can click on each planet and get more information about each one, and you can also display the orbital paths of each body to make a pretty nice overview. Now for something completely different, we have something from Pookie100 Plays, or That One Roblox Kid on YouTube, and they've created an entire 2D game using only GUI, which is definitely one way to avoid using rectangular parts. There's plenty of interaction in this one, with its fast-paced reaction mechanics, which is maybe in the vein of something like an OSU or FNF. But what I like most about this game is all the effort they've gone into with creating a character and a little simple storyline which progresses as you play and defeat each one. They've also gone to the effort of creating an entirely separate Sandbox mode where you can customize which backdrop you want to use along with a range of characters to choose from there. I did find some of the gameplay a little bit confusing at times where I seem to be able to earn points during the opponent's turn, but anyway, overall this is a really impressive entry, and a lot of work has gone into making this GUI only game. Very cool indeed. Next up we have something of a tech demo from Quackity Wackity with a pretty unique spherical terrain generation. The terrain is generated a certain stud radius around your character, much like a Minecraft or similar, I guess, so you'd technically keep walking forever in this game. There's quite a bit to explore here with multiple different biomes and some pretty interesting mountain formations. There's even these creepy looking animal skull things as well. I suspect they spent most of the GnomeJam just coding this, but if they had more time, it would have been interesting to see maybe some more gameplay or interaction in the world. Perhaps not quite as large a world as the last one, but still just as impressive. We have Rounded from Untamed Dinosaur 151. It's an RPG or adventure type game with zombies to kill, coins to collect, berries to harvest, and even a mega boss fight at the end. There's quite a lot of fun little elements in this, and everything seems to be brought nicely together to make a complete game. Sometimes having too much talking in a game can become a bit of a chore, but I actually really enjoyed interacting with each of the characters here, thanks to the slightly tongue-in-cheek dialogue. Following on, we have a creation from Heroic Hero 699 called Sphere Sandbox. This is a building sandbox that lets you both place and delete blocks, of course with the exception that the blocks are all strictly ball-sized. There's a range of different materials to choose from, and I was able to build this rather odd looking house thing. Probably my favourite part of the game though was learning that you're able to delete the base plate. So I probably spent most of the time chasing my friend around the map, and we were trying to delete the floor from under each other. Let's just say we didn't quite leave this place as good as we found it. This next creation is called Rolling Heroes by XX Jom Chai XX. It offers an arcade-like experience with a fixed camera position and only 3 fixed movement positions. I'm not really sure why we're rolling down this hill for infinity, but there sure is a lot of obstacles and debris to dodge along the way. The game's got 4 different levels to get through, including the tutorial, but don't be deceived by the seemingly gentle footage of the gameplay here. This game is hard. All of the levels are pretty long, and then you have a lengthy boss fight to complete towards the end of each. And I was so determined to beat the last boss that I actually struggled with this game for almost 90 minutes before eventually throwing in the towel. So if anyone is able to beat this thing, I want to know. Another interesting experience from Not Even Duck was Orb Battles, which is a turn-based RPG, or as he beautifully explains in the game's description, Pokemon, but without the Pokemon. You can wander around the map and set about destroying all the local wildlife. There's a range of different attacks and items you can use to your advantage, which help keep things varied. And I'd already defeated a few enemies before I even realised you can interact with the characters around the map. There's not actually any prompt, but if you do approach them and press E, then some dialogue appears, and it does help build on a little story to move things along, which then culminates in a boss fight at the end. Once I'd finally vanquished everyone though, I did feel a bit guilty looking at the empty, lifeless land that was left behind. Finally, we have AP YouTuber with this interesting little boss fight game. There's a range of different floating orbs, and you have to jump on the correct colour to damage the boss, all the while you're trying to dodge his attacks yourself. This takes a little bit of practice, though I did notice you can actually just stand in the corner and hop about there, which is surprisingly effective as a strategy. The main thing I liked about this though was the really cool intro, which has actually gone to the effort of voice acting himself. I'll play you a little clip.
What are you doing here? Wait a minute, that face looks familiar. You're the guy that betrayed me to work on another project.
Isn't that awesome? I really appreciate him going the extra mile there. It really helps bring the game to life. Okay, so that's about all we have time for. There were so many amazing games submitted, but unfortunately there's just not time to show them all. Instead, I'd like to announce the moment you've all been waiting for. The prize winners! In 5th place and taking home 2,000 Robux, we have Misadventures in Rockland by Swift Deluxe. This is one of those choose your own adventure type games where you play as this cute little guy called Rock Boy, who of course in typical fashion is tasked with just saving the entire world. We start off learning there's been some kind of strange earthquake with this great crack appearing in the earth. And as we go down to investigate, it turns out it's nothing other than a giant alien spaceship that's landed here. From here on, we meet various characters we interact with, and multiple directions we can take the storyline in, including this bizarre one where this shop owner introduces us to his brother, who then gives us a spaceship and we just fly off on our own into space and get lost. Oops. Anyway, it eventually turns out the aliens aren't so bad after all, and they're trying to rescue us from some kind of evil sphere that threatens to freeze the entire world. Although, they are trying to eat a cat, so maybe they're not all that good. I won't spoil all the endings in case you guys want to play it, because it's definitely worth checking this out yourself. I imagine it must have taken a fair bit of planning to get all the endings worked out here, and with over 12 different endpoints, this is a pretty impressive project. Next up, in 4th place, is Anopsia by Zero Refine. The object of the game is simple enough, just navigate to the end of the level. However, there's a major catch. Everything is surrounded in darkness, and you can only gain a short glimpse of the map whenever you walk. So how this works is every time your character moves, a little footstep noise is played, and then you see this sound wave around you, and as it expands, whatever it hits, those objects are revealed to you in the game. I suppose much like being a bat or a submarine using sonar. In practice though, this means you have to hug pretty close to the walls to avoid just stumbling around in the dark. So this is probably quite accurate to what it would actually be like in real life. There's also different ways of moving, such as running, which creates larger sounds, but also makes you more vulnerable to enemies. Or you can choose to crawl to make yourself quieter, but that has the obvious downside of slowing you down and making it hard to escape. I thought this was all pretty clever, and it gets you thinking about the way you move. It certainly stands out from everything else I played in the competition, and it's not an easy game either. I'm not sure how many levels there are, but I kept dying on deck number 6 of these sinister, floaty monster things, and I wasn't able to progress past them. So maybe there's loads more of the game I haven't even seen. I'll put a link to this game in the comments, so maybe you want to check it out and see how far you can get. Our next prize winner at 3rd place is the return of our GnomeJam veteran, Koogee Ball with Koogee Ball. This is kind of an arcade physics style game where you have to guide the ball along the course and out to the finish point. There are 12 different levels to complete, and it's all presented fairly professionally with this really nice looking menu. I like how bright and colourful everything is, which definitely gives it a cheerful summer kind of vibe. Some of the larger levels are a little bit laggy, no doubt due to the amount of spheres needed to construct it, but that's just a limitation of the competition, I suppose. And in general, the balls handle fairly smoothly, and it really gets you thinking about the force you need to apply at every twist and turn to perfectly guide it in. Most of the levels are fairly easy to complete, even for me, but a few do pose a gentle challenge, and I certainly fell off quite a few times. Probably the hardest part here though is keeping track of what direction you're supposed to be moving in, especially when some of the tracks take you on these crazy loop-the-loops. In order to do this, he seems to be using some kind of custom collision-based physics, and I noticed it is possible to break one of the levels if you don't hit the next funnel. Oops. Overall though, I found this really fun, and I can definitely see something like this making a decent party game in a similar vein to Super Golf if it was developed a bit further. And on to 2nd place with a rather absurd but equally inspired creation by the name of Bom Evades Taxes by Zam. You visit Boomtown and learn the plight of the local bombs who are all rather upset at their taxes being raised. This is one of those games that I think needs to be experienced firsthand to appreciate its charm. Admittedly, there's not actually a lot to do here, but there's something about all the little characters and the random dialogue that just wins me over. Unsurprisingly, when you speak to most of the bombs, they're mostly concerned about taxes, perhaps justifiably. But there's also a few little side stories going on, including a bit of romance. Once you get tired of Boomtown, you can also head off and travel to Fuse Forest, which seems to be the land of these flower creatures, and also the headquarters of the ominous IRS. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but it goes without saying this world is really well made. All the lighting and particle effects are used really well, and it really helps make it stand out. You don't even notice that everything is being built using only spheres due to how seamless it all seems to fit together. At the end of the day, I'm not really sure what's going on with this developer's head, but I've enjoyed having a quick tour of it anyway. Hopefully get his taxes sorted out too. So there we have it, all 5 of our runners-up. That only leaves one game left to announce. The all-important winner of the 2021 Spherical GnomeJam. The winner is Stick Fight by Tomnus. Now I know what you may be thinking. Hang on a minute. Those aren't spheres. And you'd be kind of correct. But the rules only explicitly stated that you couldn't use rectangular parts or meshes. People were always free to use whatever decals, GUI, or any non-physical effects or beams such as we see here. What I really like about these gnome jams is creating these limits and then seeing how people will work around them. Tomnus has done an amazing job here by using these beams to create these really cool 2D stick characters. There's a range of 3 different weapons to choose from in the game, and despite them all being melee weapons, each introduces a subtle but unique fighting style. Your character carries each one differently, and they all have a slightly different attack arc. I think my favourite weapon was probably the longsword, which I found seemed to be the most effective at both range and speed. You can see the attack animations all look really smooth, and your character can even do this awesome roll, which certainly helps during combat. Although you do need to keep an eye on your blue energy bar in the bottom corner as well. So this really adds an interesting element to the combat, as it prevents you from just spamming your rolls and attacks, and means you need to be a little bit tactical with how you do things so not to get caught out. This one was certainly a standout game for me, so well done Tomnus. I hope you enjoy your very well deserved 10k Robux. Do you guys agree with the results? Or maybe you have your own placing? Let me know down in the comments. I'm sorry yet again if your creation didn't make it into the video, but there really were so many great games to pick from. But don't go away just yet, because to see us out, I've put together a little montage of every game submitted. So I'll see you guys later. Enjoy.